Welcome to ArtBookNook. My name is Kay and I share and review my collection of lovely art and craft books. Today we're taking a look at Plein Air Watercolor by Ron Stocke. This book is all about painting on location. It's described as a definitive guide to working with watercolour out in the open air. I'm really looking forward to learning from Ron, especially since my own attempts at painting outdoors haven't always gone smoothly. So, grab a cup of tea or coffee and let's take a look inside together. Ron Stocke's journey with watercolour began in childhood during school art classes, where something about the medium captured his imagination, and that early spark has grown into a very successful career. Today Ron is an award-winning artist whose work has been featured in Watercolour Artist magazine as well as other respected publications. He's a passionate teacher, leading workshops across North America and Europe and sharing his knowledge through demonstrations and lectures. Ron also holds signature memberships in several prestigious watercolour societies, including the American, National and Northwest Watercolour Societies. He's also an elected member of the Canadian Society of Painters in Watercolour and a member of the American Impressionist Society. And for over 15 years he's served as an artist ambassador for M. Graham Watercolours. Wow, that's quite a list of accolades, isn't it? So you can see how excited I was to purchase a copy of Ron's splendid book. Chapter 1 begins with a simple quote: "Draw all you want, but paint only what you need." The focus here is on drawing skills, and Ron makes it clear that drawing is the foundation of all successful paintings. He says it may be the single most important exercise you'll take away from his book. Throughout this chapter, Ron will explain why he considers drawing skills to be so essential, offering insights that are both practical and encouraging for artists at any level. There are many different approaches to drawing, but Ron's preferred technique is something he calls a modified contour drawing, or as he likes to describe it, controlled scribble. In this method, you draw the subject using one continuous line without lifting your pencil from the paper. It's a very good way to loosen up, and Ron shares the details of his technique here, making it easy to follow along and try it for yourself. When you're working on location, you're rarely aiming for a fully rendered drawing. More often than not, you're simply sketching. Ron reminds us that not all lines carry the same weight. When he approaches a subject, he aims to use as few lines as possible, focusing on the outer edges to capture the essence of the scene. On the left-hand page, you'll see an example of a tightly drawn sketch, while on the right there is Ron's controlled scribble version. Which one do you find more interesting? Let me know in the comments below. Ron advises simplifying your subject into basic shapes. When you're painting on location, things are constantly shifting. Cars drive away, new ones come along and park up. The scene is rarely still for long. By breaking your subject down into just a few essential shapes, it not only saves valuable time, but also helps to loosen up your painting style. In the introduction to perspective, Ron acknowledges it can feel a little confusing at first, but he's quick to reassure you that once you grasp the basics, your drawings and paintings will start to look far more authentic. And with a bit of practice, understanding perspective will become second nature and simply a natural part of how you draw. On these 2 pages, Ron offers a straightforward, easy to understand overview of both 1-point and 2-point perspective. He explains how vanishing points work and how to put them into practice in your own drawings. Here we have a lovely example of a drawing Ron completed in Florence, Italy. He wanted to capture the scale and presence of the archway, and perspective plays an important role in achieving that. Notice too how he uses contrast effectively. The dark figures in the foreground stand out against the light top of the carousel, guiding the viewer's eye into the scene. It's important to understand the size of objects in relation to their surroundings. Getting these proportions right helps your sketches feel believable and to scale. Ron shares several helpful reference points to keep in mind. For example, The seat of a cafe chair is roughly the height of your knee, and when someone is seated at a table, the tabletop usually lines up just below their rib cage. Here Ron demonstrates how to judge the size of your subject in relation to its surroundings using a simple tool, your pencil. It's a classic technique, and it's clearly illustrated here to help you see exactly how it's done. It's hard to imagine a day when you don't see a car. In many of Ron's compositions, cars are used to fill space or create a certain atmosphere. Across these 2 pages, you'll find examples of cars cropped from his paintings, so you can take a closer look in isolation and see just how he's rendered them. Few subjects are more challenging to draw or paint than the human figure, but Ron reminds us that a figure is just a series of connected shapes, no different from any other object we sketch. In the bottom right, you'll find a wonderful example as Ron takes his initial contour sketch all the way through to the final finished painting. To avoid figures, or any object really, looking like they've been cut and pasted into your scene with a hard outline, they need to be connected to the rest of the painting. In these 2 examples, notice how Ron achieves this. The figures move in and out of the shadows, becoming part of the environment rather than separate from it. In Chapter 2, Painting on Location, Ron shares practical tips to help you get started. He tells us that painting outdoors has brought many benefits throughout his career, and whilst it comes with its challenges, it's also rewarding. It teaches you how to simplify shapes, understand values better, and develop more confident, energetic brushstrokes. Ron offers advice on how to tackle the experience, how to scope out your location, choose your spot, ask for permission when needed, draw out your composition, and perhaps most importantly, set realistic goals for your session to avoid frustration. He reminds us that if your only goal is to paint a masterpiece, you'll likely walk away disappointed. But if you approach the day with curiosity and purpose, you'll always come away having learned something valuable. When painting on location, Ron uses the same brushes, palette and boards he relies on in the studio. That way, he knows exactly how his materials will behave. Here he shares his go-to supplies, along with one key piece of advice: don't take your entire studio to the beach. And I know exactly what he means. Back in 2019, I took part in the Sky Arts Landscape Artist of the Year TV show here in the UK. I was selected as a wild card, basically a hopeful artist not officially in the competition, but still part of the action, and it was such a wonderful experience and great fun, and one I would do again. But as you'll see, I brought everything with me but the kitchen sink. Throughout history, artists have been inspired by light, its mood and the way it transforms a scene. Think of Monet or Sorolla, both masters at capturing light, which can change in just a few minutes. Ron encourages you to try to freeze that moment on your surface as best you can. To help you prepare, he shares his 10 essential setup steps, a simple practical guide to help you get ready and focus before you begin. Ron reminds us that even the best laid plans can fall apart when you're in the hands of Mother Nature. Conditions change, weather shifts, and sometimes, despite your best efforts, you'll need to work from photographs, and that's okay. How often have you stood somewhere truly magical, snapped a photo, and then felt just a little disappointed by the result? We've all done it, haven't we? Photographs are helpful as references, but remember, the human eye sees very differently from a camera. What we feel, sense and see often gets lost in a flat image. Ron encourages us to use photos without relying on them too heavily. You've probably heard this before. I have 100 brushes, but I only use 5 or 6 of them. Ron calls this the watercolourist's curse. No matter how many brushes we collect, we're always searching for just one more, the magic brush that will make us paint like our favourite artists. But as Ron reminds us, it's not the brush that improves your painting, it's the time you spend using it. There's a huge variety of brushes available, and Ron shares a few of his personal favourites. When it comes to watercolour paint, the colours you choose can make a huge difference to the outcome of your work. Ron recommends investing in professional quality paint from a reputable brand because the richness, transparency and handling of the paint all play a role in the final result. Here he shares a few of the trusted brands he personally uses, paints that offer consistency, strong pigments and beautiful results out in the field or back in the studio. Ron takes us through a plein air painting titled King Street Station. He walks us through each step of the process, sharing how the changing weather affected his decisions and what he had to consider when timing his washes. You will also see how he carefully connected the many buildings, cars and shapes within the scene, bringing everything together into a unified composition. It's a helpful example of how planning, adaptability and experience all come into play when painting outdoors. You have to learn to adapt, especially to the weather. On hot days, your washes will dry faster than expected, and on this occasion it was the rain. Ron's first wash hadn't dried completely, but he knew he'd gathered enough information to continue the work back in the studio. And that, he says, isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, finishing a painting indoors can give you the freedom to loosen up and paint with a bit more creative licence. Let's pause for a moment and just look at this stunning 2-page spread featuring one of Ron's beautiful paintings. Even though it's painted in such a loose, expressive style, our brain fills in the details. I especially love how Ron has captured the light. There's a real sense of warmth. You can almost feel the heat and the sunlight radiating off the page. This chapter is all about composition and tension. We start with a familiar concept, the golden rule, where the picture is divided vertically and horizontally into equal thirds. Ron begins by demonstrating how to sketch using this method with simple thumbnail drawings. He explains that it's important to place your focal point in one of those sweet spots right from the beginning. In Ron's painting, The English Garden, you can see this in action. The focal point is the old cottage, and the path leads our eye directly into the painting, guiding us straight to it. It's such helpful advice, and I honestly wish I'd understood this sooner. I just love the colour palette in this painting. I think it's gorgeous. On my last attempt at painting on location, I felt completely overwhelmed. I was trying to capture the entire scene and it just wasn't working. Thankfully, my tutor, the incredible watercolourist Andy Evenson, stepped in. He pointed out that I was attempting the impossible and helped me refocus on just one element. Ron gently guides us through the art of creating tension in a composition, a subtle but powerful way to keep the viewer engaged and to lead their eye around the scene. The focal point is the anchor, drawing our attention first. From there, every other element is placed with intention but quietly supports the main focus, allowing the viewer's eye to wander naturally, yet always returning to the main focal point. Ron reminds us that everything we see is made up of basic shapes, and yet, when we place a figure in a painting, our eyes go straight to it. That's because we recognise the human form instantly, even before we register any other shape. In the first image of Ron's painting, J&M Cafe, the figures are the focal point. The triangular umbrellas around them were painted quickly with loose brushwork and little precision, allowing them to fade into the background. They support the scene, but they don't compete for attention. In the second image, those same umbrellas have been digitally altered, made into perfect equal triangles, so now the balance is lost. The viewer's eye no longer knows where to settle first. An excellent example of how deliberate imperfection can strengthen a composition. One of the most common mistakes Ron sees is with rectangular shapes. There's a natural tendency to make them too perfect, but notice in the image at the bottom right how the windows, neatly drawn and evenly spaced, immediately pull your eye away from the true focal point, the group of people. On the right-hand page, Ron offers us a glimpse into his sketchbook. Notice the graphic thumbnail sketch where he's exploring basic shapes and values, a colour swatch, and a rough colour study for what will eventually become his finished painting Via Filungo Luca. These on-the-spot studies aren't just useful references for future work, they're also lovely visual memories of the day. Ron takes the concept of tension a step further here. When you're setting up a scene, ask yourself, how am I going to create balance in this image? He introduces us to three key areas: colour, value and design. Each one offers a way to guide the viewer's eye and add visual interest. For example, take a look at the blue brushstroke on the left page. On its own, it might not catch your attention, but paired with the dry brushwork and that lighter value, it suddenly becomes far more interesting. The subtle contrast creates tension, which holds our gaze. Here Ron illustrates three ways to adjust the tension in a painting by shifting the horizon line. In the first example, the horizon is placed high, and this instantly creates a sense of movement and action. There is an energy to it, a feeling that something is happening within the space. The second example is perhaps the most familiar. This mid-level horizon line is a common choice among artists because it reflects the viewer's natural vantage point. It's what we typically see in real life, and it feels comfortable and balanced. In the third example, the horizon line is set low. This can add a sense of drama and distance, opening up the sky and giving a painting an expansive, distant feel. Ron reminds us, whatever we choose, not to let the horizon line float, disconnected from the painting. We now turn our attention to colour and value with Ron, and just look at this gorgeous two-page spread. You can really take in the beauty of Ron's brushwork here. It's a treat to see it in such detail, but I'm afraid a screen just doesn't do it justice. To really appreciate the richness of his work, you'll need to experience it for yourself, but not to worry, I've added links in the description below so you can buy your own copy of Ron Stocke's book and enjoy it close up. Ron shares that taking the time to paint a colour wheel is well worth the effort for any artist. Over the years he's painted dozens, and with so many brands of watercolour paint on the market, he's learned something new with each one. Every wheel offers insights into how colours behave, mix and interact. This is something that I personally love to do. There's no pressure to create a masterpiece. It's a relaxing exercise. Just you, the colours and the joy of watching them unfold and do their own thing on the paper. Ron goes on to describe a few different types of colour palettes, including analogous, split complementary and harmonious combinations. Each one offers a different kind of balance and mood, and understanding them gives us the tools to create paintings that truly sing. Ron encourages us to shift our thinking from colour to value. This means focusing on how light or dark something is rather than what colour it happens to be. It's a foundational skill. Over the next few pages, he'll guide us through this idea in more depth, showing us how understanding value can strengthen our work. Across these 2 pages, Ron has created a simple colour chart showcasing the main colours he relies on in his paintings. It's a glimpse into his personal palette. Ron walks us through the process of creating a good colour wash. He shares a personal preference too when it comes to greens. He prefers to mix them directly on the paper rather than in the palette because the results are often more spontaneous, more vibrant and far more interesting. At the bottom right, you'll see 2 examples of this technique, mixing ultramarine blue and yellow right on the paper. Depending on which colour is laid down first, the mixes behave very differently. And just above that, Ron includes a comparison, the exact same 2 colours, but this time mixed in the palette. It's a great way to see how technique changes the outcome, and a reminder to us to experiment and enjoy the process. Here Ron shares several more beautiful examples of this technique in action. Take a closer look at the area beneath the seat of the Vespa, where cobalt blue and cadmium orange have been mixed directly on the paper. The result is a softly granulating warm grey. It's these subtle, unexpected blends that bring character to a painting. Ron shows us how embracing the natural behaviour of pigments can lead to effects that are both expressive and unique. Ron offers some really helpful tips for mixing darks. On the left-hand page, you'll find examples of ivory black and lamp black watercolour paint. At first glance, they may seem rich, but Ron asks us to pay attention to what happens as they dry. The washes appear flat with very little variation or life in them. Now look at the right-hand page. Here Ron shows 4 examples of darks created by mixing a warm and a cool colour together. The difference is striking. These washes have depth, texture and a sense of movement. They're far more engaging to the eye. Ron also explains how you can shift the mood of your darks. By adding more of the cool colour, you'll get a moody, wintry feel, perfect for a grey day. Add more of the warm colour and you'll get a rich, glowing dark that suits a hot, sunlit scene. Personally, I think this would make a lovely little exercise, experimenting with our own palettes to discover just how many different darks we could create. It's such a practical way to get to know your colours. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. The importance of painting with greys cannot be overstated. On the right-hand page, Ron shares a beautiful example, a painting that's really a study in greys, both warm and cool. Greys play a quiet but powerful role in the composition. They act as supporting tones, allowing the brighter colours to shine. They connect shapes, guide the eye and establish a strong sense of perspective. Cool greys tend to recede the horizon, whilst warm greys advance it. Here Ron provides an example of the range of warm and cool greys you can achieve using just 2 colours, burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. By adjusting the balance between the two, you can create a wide spectrum of greys, from soft warm tones to cool atmospheric shadows. Notice how these greys support the rest of the painting. They don't compete with the colours, they enhance them without overwhelming the scene. Here Ron shares several examples of the colour combinations he uses most often. The illustrations show how you can mix 2 colours directly on the paper to create beautiful tertiary colours. When handled this way, the colours stay vibrant, blending just enough to suggest interest without becoming muddy. Ron points out that if these same colours had been mixed in the palette first, the result would likely be a flat grey. But by letting the pigments mingle on the page, this allows the paint to do something magical. Here is a step-by-step demonstration of a painting entitled Nice Marina. It's a wonderful opportunity to follow Ron's process from the very beginning, watching how he builds the scene layer by layer. As he works, Ron talks us through his thinking, guiding us to consider not just what he paints but why. Once again, he reminds us of the value of starting with a thumbnail sketch. It's an essential step, helping to establish composition, value and the overall mood before any colour touches the page. Ron's demonstration is a lovely insight into how a strong painting begins with clear and simple planning. In the Tips and Techniques chapter, Ron shares a collection he's developed over the years, which he hopes will help you to create more successful, confident paintings. That's what we're all looking for, isn't it? Those little artistic secrets that make all the difference. But Ron says they're only starting points, because just like we all have our own taste in music and food, the way we paint is unique to us too. He encourages you to experiment and make each technique your own. The first tip he shares is how to paint realistic shadows. When painting reflections, the shadow only moves when the surface that's reflecting it moves, like the shifting ripples of water. Take a moment to compare the reflections in the water on the left-hand page with the image on the right, where Ron captures the shimmering surface of a wet pavement. The difference is striking, one full of fluid movement, the other still and mirror-like. Personally, I find this technique so inspiring. There's something truly magical about how a rainy street scene can be evoked with just paint and paper. I plan to practice this myself. It's a beautiful way to bring mood and atmosphere into a painting, and it never fails to capture my imagination. Ron tells us that something as simple as sitting down while painting can quite literally change your perspective. If you're not able to stand for the entire painting session, he encourages you to complete your initial drawing while standing. That way, you're more in tune with the natural eye level and the proportions of your subject. And remember to step back from your painting from time to time. A fresh view helps you check your composition and spot imbalances. Also watch out for accidental tension in your composition. Take a look at the left-hand image on the right page. Notice how the sign lines up exactly with the edge of the building. It creates a kind of awkward visual alignment that draws the eye, but not in a helpful way. Now look at the image on the right. It's a small adjustment, but by simply shifting the viewpoint slightly, the scene feels more natural and pleasing to the eye. A reminder that little changes often have the biggest impact. When it comes to detail, Ron states, if you can't hit it with a baseball, don't paint it. Too much detail can easily overwhelm a painting, and instead of drawing the viewer in, it just scatters their focus, taking attention away from the message you're really trying to convey. And Ron's final tip is one we all need to hear: paint often and paint a lot. Try new techniques, experiment, fail, and then try again. Your failures will always outnumber your victories, but that's how we grow. That's how we develop the skills and muscle memory that make the magic happen. I've been lucky enough to learn from many artists over the years, and they've all said the same thing to me. They only ever show the best 20% of their work. The rest are all part of the learning process. Ron believes that what truly sets us apart as artists is also the one thing we all share: the time and effort we dedicate to developing our own unique voice. He's a strong advocate for painting on location because it pushes you to respond to what's happening in front of you. Your brushstrokes become instinctive and expressive rather than overly planned. To illustrate this, Ron invites you to look at the 3 paintings that follow, all of the same subject, the public market centre, and yet each one conveys a completely different mood. That's the power of personal interpretation. Same place, same painter, but 3 distinct moments. In the first image, Ron has abandoned most of the detail in this biddy location scene, guiding the viewer to a single figure, the lady in the yellow coat. This image really comes down to just 3 basic shapes: the sky, the buildings, and the ribbon of light that captures the taxi and the figures. This time the composition is all about the light. The figures, the shadows, and the buildings are telling the viewer the same thing. Just look at the light. We now have a step-by-step demonstration of a painting entitled Intersection in Prague. The original scene was painted on an overcast day with soft shadows and muted colours, but Ron felt it needed something more, so he chose a bolder, more vibrant palette to inject energy and mood into the scene. By changing your colour palette or by stylising the shapes you see, you start to move beyond simply recording what's in front of you. These are just a couple of the ways you can begin to discover and express your own unique voice as an artist. On these 2 pages, Ron shares 4 lovely examples of work from artists he personally admires. Each one has been chosen to show the wide range of styles and possibilities that can be achieved with watercolour. My personal favourite is the painting bottom right, Grain Square Series 10 by Bill Hook. I just love how Bill Hook has captured that grungy urban feel, and I really like the colour palette too. It just goes to show, doesn't it, how expressive and versatile watercolour can be when you really make it your own. Ron concludes his wonderful book by returning to where we began, with sketching. If there's one thing Ron wouldn't be without, it's his sketchbook, a portable resource that has become a necessary and valuable artistic tool, a place where dreams have been recorded, memories captured, and view of people, travels and moments that have made an impression on Ron's life. Ron's advice when choosing a sketchbook is to look for one that can handle mixed media. He avoids limiting himself to one specific type of paper and instead recommends finding a surface that's versatile, something that can take graphite, ink and watercolour. He also prefers a hard cover. Not only does it protect the pages inside, but it gives him a solid surface to write on wherever he may be, whether he's sketching at a cafe table or perched on a park bench. Interiors are one of Ron's favourite subjects to paint, partly because of the sense of intimacy they convey, but also because they present a unique set of challenges. Unlike outdoor scenes, interiors often have multiple light sources: natural light from a window, artificial light from a lamp, and navigating those subtle shifts in value and temperature. For Ron, it's this complexity that makes them so engaging to paint. We finish with one final demonstration from Ron, titled Hotel Negresco. This is a studio painting based on a study Ron created on plein air. In this step-by-step example, Ron walks us through two important concepts. First, how to successfully transfer an image from a location sketch into a finished studio piece, and second, the impact of deliberately preserving large areas of white paper in a composition. I think the final painting is quite spectacular, don't you? Sadly, we've now reached the end of Ron's incredibly inspiring book. I really hope you've enjoyed my review as much as I've enjoyed creating it for you. What attracted me to Ron's book in the first place was the colour, the beautiful, bold, vibrant colours on the cover. It really is a fabulous book. In the description below, you'll find links to where you can buy your own personal copy of On Plein Air Watercolor by Ron Stocke. It really is a beautifully presented guide for painting outdoors with confidence. I've also included a link to Ron Stocke's website. Ron doesn't appear to have his own YouTube channel, but I was able to find several YouTube videos that you might want to take a look at. One is Ron explaining why he loves grain watercolours. There is an interview with Ron Stocke, and I found 3 demos which you may like to watch. I wasn't able to find any DVDs or actual courses, online courses run by Ron. However, he does run in-person workshops, and the links to those you'll find again on his website. And I've also linked to Ron's Facebook and Instagram page. I hope you found this review helpful. If you did, please give the video a like. It really helps YouTube share it with others who enjoy art books too. I post a new art book review every week, so if you'd like to see more, do consider subscribing. I truly appreciate it. If you found the review helpful, please feel free to leave a comment below. I reply to everyone. And if there's an art book you'd like me to feature, just let me know. I'll do my best to review it for you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy painting.